car. Don't move. Who are these people?
We need to get out of here.
Are they with you?
Not an inch, Miss Shaw. Miss Shaw, stop! Stop! Sorry.
Helena!
Dr. Jones, it's over.
Who are you people? What do you want?
Stop!
Helena Shaw! She's on the roof. Find another way up.
Dr. Jones! Dr. Jones, we're not gonna hurt you.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 234 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? Yes, that's right, we are back. I'm Becca and as always I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts Chris Byrne and Dave Bond. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, good morning, depending on what you listen to. You know,
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Could be tucking into your lunch, you know, or brunch or something. You know, you know.
This is it, could be having your dinner. Anyway, we are stepping out of the saddle momentarily, taking a detour from our All the Westerns series and travelling back in time as the new Indiana Jones movie just dropped, which is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And Indiana Jones in the alliterative title.
Tell us about that.
Starring. So I'm trying to get back into it because you've been away for a while. Starring Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Karen Allen, John Rhys Davies, Mads Mikkelsen, sorry I mispronounced his name, Toby Jones, Antonio Banderas, Shawnette Renee Wilson, Thomas Kretschmann and many more, with a beautiful score by the legend John Williams, with a script by Jez Butterworth, John Henry Butterworth, David Cup, James Mangold, and directed by James Mangold and released just the other week. This will be to put a warning out, this will be a spoilery review podcast. So if you haven't seen the film, stop
Have we
it
ever
now.
done a non-spoiler program? And then, you know, happens, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, just as a warning, listener, if you haven't seen it, pause this podcast, go and watch the movie. You'll have a great time, and then come back and listen to us.
I feel like spoilers is just an odd thing that's happened in the past like 10, 15 years because, I mean, while yeah, it might have like, you know, like the mild spoiler, you know, like say Empire Strikes Back or something like that.
Yeah.
But it just seems to be like you can't say anything about anything these days. Like every like major release, it's like you can't say anything. You think like, was there anything to fucking spoil? Like seriously. Like...
A lot of YouTubers often do like 2 videos, don't they? They do like a sort of reaction, and then they do like the spoilerific one after.
Well, I'll tell you what. Obviously, all of the details of the plot are a spoiler if you don't know them. But in terms of maybe perception-changing spoilers in terms of either what you expected or the way you'll come away thinking of the franchise afterwards, I think there's only two, in much the same way that No Time to Die, the big spoiler was the death of the character. I think the two spoilers here would be he doesn't die, but Mutt Williams does. And not within not within the running time of this film. He's already dead when the film
there isn't
opens.
really much spoilery, I guess. But...
Yeah, those are the two major things to get out the way, and that's it really. Apart from that, I think you're right. It's not that spoiler. It's not that. There's nothing that earth-shattering in this really. But yeah, so I saw it opening day. No, I think it came out on the Wednesday originally, and I saw it on the Friday. I saw it on the 30th. That was a regular sort of ordinary 2D screening, and then I went in on the Saturday for a double bill. I went to see Asteroid City, the new what's he called?
Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson. Sorry, could blanked on his name for a minute.
It's the most Wes Anderson movie that ever was Anderson.
It really is. It's one of those things. I have two reactions to Wes Anderson films. I either love them like I love nothing else in the world, or I can't stand what a self-indulgent load of tosh he's made. And this is in the second category.
You must agree, they look beautiful. Like the colours are really striking, are really bold, and
This cold clip delivery and all sort of arch and knowing, and I really, really hated it.
sometimes they're kind of in danger of almost being like a Yorgos Lanthimos film, another name I can't pronounce.
I had the same reaction to Moonrise Kingdom, but for example, I loved Grand Budapest Hotel. I really
Yeah, that
loved
was great.
I loved the Royal Tenenbaums, and I've loved a few others. But I came out of that and went straight into an IMAX screening of this, so I've seen this twice.
So it must be a weird thing to sort of a weird double bill to kind of go into that, and yeah. By the way, I've never got into Wes Anderson. I've never kind of found his movies. I just never got them.
Did you ever see Grand Budapest Hotel?
Yeah.
Okay. To be honest,
I think I've seen all of them.
I think, yeah, if you don't like either of those or the Royal Tenenbaums, you're not going to like him at all.
I think the Royal Tenenbaums was probably the one that I couldn't. I don't know why, but I found it really hard to get into. It's one of those films like I started a couple of times, maybe got like halfway through. I must force my way through it at some point. But I just find it, of all those films, like the most difficult. I don't know why.
I struggled.
They're all about family, so I don't know why.
I didn't enjoy it. I couldn't wait for it to finish. And then, of course, I realised that I'm going into Indy, which is fine, but as we'll get to, I kind of struggled with the second half of Indy. So whilst as an overall running time, it wasn't a problem because Asteroid City was reasonably short. It was certainly well under 2 hours.
Yeah, it was long.
I was a little bit like, I've just struggled through this, and no doubt I'm going to struggle through the second half of that as well.
No, so I just I saw it twice. I saw it opening day and then again in the week. And incidentally, I knew we've got a lovely new shiny Everyman opened up in Salisbury. And I think in their Scream 1, that's the only one I've been in so far.
I haven't been in ours yet.
They've got I want to go and check it out. It looks really
Yours
nice.
and ours opened at the same time.
They did on the same day, I believe.
Yeah.
And I know they do look broadly similar now, which is a shame.
Yeah. They're expensive though, so it's the sort of thing I'll do for a special occasion.
It's a real treat.
If It's a Wonderful Life comes out on the big screen at Christmas, I'll go and see it at the Everyman.
Yeah, it'll be it's one of those occasions definitely. But I think in Screen 1 they've got obviously they have like different murals and lots of movie artwork and stuff like that. And they've got a few I don't know kind of what you call them, like montages, I guess, photo montages or whatever.
I know.
From Grand Budapest, so that was pretty cool seeing like a Wes Anderson movie with that in the background. So that was pretty fun. Yeah. But so I saw it on opening day, and then India I saw that on the Wednesday, and then again in the week at a different cinema, not the Everyman, because it's bloody expensive. And I think I struggled like with the getting through the second half, but then on my second viewing, I think I could just kind of let all the hype and everything kind of just drip away, and I didn't struggle as much. There's lots of things I still need to mention. So like friends are sort of saying, "Oh, did you notice that? Did you spot this? Did you spot that?" And I was like, there's a lot of things I noticed the second time around that I didn't the first time around. I think just because I was so on edge about it being a new indie film. But no, I think I don't know. This seems to be a bit of a Marmite movie for sure, but I think it's not without its problems, but I think I'm probably going to be like most positive of the three of us.
What about you, Chris, in terms of you've seen it once, twice, and...
Yeah, I've only seen it once. I saw it last night, so I'm probably the freshest. I'm coming in fresh.
Going in fresh.
I don't know. I mean, I was almost like kind of really before I was like, I'm not sure I'm even that bothered. I mean, this is how bad things are now. With like, you think with like a new Indiana Jones film, I'd be like well up, but it's with like the state of Marvel and Star Wars and as such, like it just seems DC's even like it just seems like can I be bothered? So I almost kind of like was almost like I'm not even sure I actually can really that interested in seeing it now. So I've only really watched it because I knew we were recording a show which kind of made my mind up whether I was going to see it or not. So cheers, guys. No, I'm joking. No, I'm glad I saw it, but no, it's I only saw it last night, so I'm coming in fresh. and what I think about, I'll get into first thoughts. But yeah, no.
Well, I'll happily go first with some first thoughts.
Some
Mine
can't have
are-
thoughts.
Well, I'm gonna say a little bit less than I might have done, just on the basis that I'm more interested to hear yours than my own, and I know you know mine because earlier on I physically wrote a review for it, and whilst that's not published yet, I did take some shots of it to share with them so that they knew what I was thinking before we recorded. So both these guys kind of know what I think. On first viewing, I walked out and the person I was with said to me, "What did you think?" And I said, "I need to sleep on that." And normally I have an opinion, but I was a little bit like, I enjoyed bits of it well enough, and it kind of feels like a Indiana Jones film, but I don't know what I think. I need to sleep on it. And then I was sat in with, what was I sat in with? I was sat in with Asteroid City, and I just remember thinking, I'm not looking forward to seeing this again, which was the first sign that maybe I didn't think that much of it. There was certainly, I certainly had some very negative reactions to certain things the first time, and we'll get into a lot of those as we go through in order, I think. But I'll give you the broad highlights. Is that the second time I really, really didn't like it. I liked the first 25 minutes, the sort of prologue of the film, the set in 1944, which is never said on screen, by the way. You've got to sort of, you can infer it's the sort of same age Indy we had in the original trilogy, but of course that finished in, 1939? Something like that? No, hang on, 40 something, wasn't it? 41? I can't remember what year Last Crusade is set in now. The Americans joined the war at that point? I can't remember. Anyway, the point is, we knew
They
it was
joined quite late, didn't they?
We knew it was, well, they joined after Pearl Harbor, which was 1941, late 1941. So you're looking at sort of 42 or on. But anyway, the point is that you can infer it's around that era. But all the press and promotion around it said the prologue's 1944, or 25 years earlier than the film, which we know is July and August 1969. So you can infer it's around there. And I had, on the one hand, I would have almost
just to confirm, Dave, it's 1938.
Which one?
Yeah, Last Crusade was 1938.
Oh, right. I thought... Oh, yes, because Raiders is 36, and then the previous one is 30... The next one's 35. Something like that. All right, I thought it was 39 and 38. It doesn't really matter. The point is... yeah, because war's about to start, isn't it? All right. I'm sure this is no fun for listeners, me thinking around in my head as to which year it was. But yes, we are in around Nazi times, and we can see that Harrison's about that age. Now, on the one hand, if the whole film had been that, I would have accepted it with its flaws. In that this is the Indiana Jones we all fell in love with. He's in sort of hostile territory, in a country that's not his own, making it up as he goes along. Very physical. Lots of fist fights, Nazis abounding.
Punching Nazis.
Yeah. All of that is very, very Indiana Jones, even if we've not seen a set piece on a train like this before. So it's, it's logically something that feels, it's like putting Bond in a new environment, but it still feels like Bond. So I was really happy with it, but I will say the CG work was flawed, to say the least. When they pulled the hood off Indy, it looked like him. It was fine. But as soon as he moves, the facial muscles aren't moving quite right, and the eyes are sort of moving a bit dead and soulless. And it reminded me, and I've said this in the review, if you watch like an interrogation scene or play an interrogation scene in LA Noire, the video game,
when
the suspects are looking off into different directions, concealing their guilt or otherwise, it looked like that. And then there is a bit where he runs across the top of a train and you see it at a distance, and it reminded me of Tintin's run in the cartoon, not even the 2007 or 9 or whatever it was CG film. So it was definitely very flawed. But I enjoyed it. It felt like Indiana Jones, and I thought we'll give it a pass because there's something wrong in Hollywood at the moment. CG work is just the worst I've seen it since its early days. And consistently so. For years, it got better to the point that it was getting towards the point of flawless. But now, in film after film, I'm seeing subpar CG, and I think this was subpar. For example, it looked better on. It was fewer scenes, but it looked better on the young Micah Douglas in Ant-Man. It looked better on the young Kurt Russell in Guardians 2, and it looked better on the young Samuel L. Jackson in, well, both the current Secret Invasion series, although that's a small screen, and in obviously Captain Marvel. So
I've not seen that yet. I need to check it out.
even studios that are currently doing it badly have done it in recent years far better. But then we get into the meat of the film, and I don't want to talk too much because we'll talk as we go through. I found it profoundly depressing, to be honest. Indy's life is not good. He's sad, and I hate saying this. Everyone called him too old in Crystal Skull. I didn't find his age a problem. I found the era odd in that Indy amongst greasers and sort of nuclear test sites is a bit unusual for us because we think of him so much as that sort of late 30s era. But he had a fist fight at one point around all those dangerous ants with Irina Spalko's, I think she's called, henchman, and it still looked really like vibrant. He still could do all that. In this film, he can't. He's gone. He's gone physically. So they've got to digitally double everything. So he's riding the horse, and his face is pasted on. And every time you get a close in on him, it's clearly against green screen or the volume or something like that. It doesn't look real. And he's. We'll talk about Phoebe Waller-Bridge because I think she's going to get like a mixed reaction. I've settled down on I like her, but I don't like the character. I think the character is morally fucking bankrupt and lacking in empathy to the point of being a sociopath. They've tried to sort of replicate a version of sort of Short Round, but he's a non-entity. The villain gets kind of wasted. I like Mads Mikkelsen, but he just teleports to wherever like Indy is to provide a threat. And by the end, it's just like Indy wants to die. Indy genuinely wants to die, and I'm thinking, I don't care about this now. We shouldn't be seeing this. He's too old for this, and the film isn't working. And the second half is absurdly too long. I liked about the first hour and a quarter. The first 25 is prologue. I think up to about the hour mark is the first act, and I think you get a bit of them in Tangier, and the tuk-tuk race is pretty good. And that takes you up to just under an hour and a quarter, and from there the film falls apart. I didn't like this at all, and we'll get into the detail as to why as we go through. What about you guys?
Becca, do you want to go first? As it's probably the most positive voice on the...
I'm going in a sandwich on my okie it's kind of not without its flaws, really. Going in, I kind of thought, I was really hyped for this. I do love Indy. It's probably one of my favourite franchises. I know that's really, really stupid. And it's probably idiotic because a serious film student. But it's kind of a sort of favourite franchises, and I'm sure you can remember, hearing me fangirl over Last Crusade when we covered it on a podcast previously. Probably up there with Bond. It's probably one of my favourite sort of franchises ever. So kind of obviously Phoebe Waller-Bridge had quite a big hand in it's
got a huge nostalgia element to it, doesn't it, Becca?
It really does, especially after Crystal Skulls as well. And we all, a lot of the fan community was like, oh, is it going to pick up where it left off, or is it just going to sort of trample all over it and just pretend it didn't exist? And is it kind of going to, and obviously as more kind of plot information became available, we kind of knew what was going on there. But my sort of big worry, obviously Phoebe Waller-Bridge is fantastic. Love Fleabag on stage and on the small screen as well. Shanahan in Mighty No Time to Die, but obviously faced a lot of backlash because she killed Bond off. And I didn't know at the time. I didn't know her involvement. I thought she was involved in writing the script, and she wasn't. But I kind of thought, is it going to be a case of Phoebe Waller-Bridge and the Dial of Destiny, not Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Part of that unfortunately did come true a little bit for me, which I feel a little bit gutted about. So things I liked. Right, sorry, this is really disjointed. I do apologise. Things I like, obviously. It's hard. I really enjoyed it. It's still, for me, it kind of retained that aspect of fun that indie films are meant to be. It's meant to be harking back to those kind of 30s, 40s, 50s kind of boys' own adventures, the sort of likes that George Lucas and Spielberg kind of grew up with. It's kind of, for me, it did kind of feel like one of those. So it just slots in behind the original trilogy, kind of, for me, in terms of ranking them. For me, it does still kind of retain that magic almost. It is quite long, The leads are all great. Like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, yeah, I would agree with you, Dave. Her character is morally bankrupt. But yeah, not very likable at all. But I don't think we are meant to like her.
I think it's meant to come off more roguish than it does, though. Where she comes off sociopathic in places.
I feel like they're vibing for, like... Because I feel like...
She's meant to be an anti-hero.
Yeah, pretty much that kind of... it's probably not...
Especially like in the 60s as well, where she's kind of, quite... I'm not going to say spunky, feisty, those kind of words, but... she's kind of obviously she's a student and kind of like moon landing sort of.
I didn't see any spunk.
No, I'm trying not to use those words, but a kind of.
I didn't bring it up.
No, I really didn't. It's me for a change. She's very quick. She's very smart. She's switched on. If anybody's going to sort of...
She's a bit, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't say that. If anybody's take over the Indy's mantle, it's her. She's very much an adventurer in her own right, or kind of like wheeling and dealing almost a little bit. For me, the highlights were Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mads Mikkelsen, and Toby Jones, Toby Jones.
Toby Jug.
Toby Jug. I don't know why I call him Toby Jug. Toby Jones is fantastic. Literally, whatever he does, I haven't really seen him in a bad film. He's fantastic.
So you've not seen him in a bad film? You mean, or you've not seen him be bad?
I've seen him in a bad film. No, that's it. Yeah,
he's never been bad in anything.
He's never been in a bad film.
No, he's never been bad in a film. That is different. Chris is right.
No, definitely is for sure. For example, I recently saw Barbarian Sound Studio, which is a few years old now. He was great in it. The film, I'm still not convinced about, but he was fantastic. He was really, really good, so I can recommend that. An excellent sound design for a film that is about sound design. For me, basically, things I liked. The cast, it still maintains that sense of sort of indie adventure. Some really amazing set pieces. For a film that is quite long, I kind of don't feel it's bloated. It sort of rattles along a little bit. And things I don't like. I would kind of agree with you a little bit, Dave, that the CGI largely okay, but some of the de-aging is quite spot on. Like initially when he's kind of revealed, his face is pulled out from underneath the potato sack, the Hessian sack, and then once he kind of starts talking and moving, it does vary a little bit into Uncanny Valley. And the scene, like when he's first on top of the train, it does kind of go into a little bit like Uncharted video game territory.
He's got this weird bouncy run.
It's very odd, yeah. But then if you watch that all the way, he has that all the way through, and that's even something that River Phoenix did in Last Crusade, in the early scenes of Last Crusade. That's kind of something that he tried to sort of not copy, but that's kind of where it comes from.
I'll take your word for it. I just thought it was poorly animated.
No, yeah, yes, it kind of makes, especially because it's shot. It's a nighttime scene as well. So another place where I think the CGI kind of is let down a little bit, and this is no slight on the artist who worked many hours, to get this film out. But I will anyway. Is the scene when they're at Syracuse. To me, it did look a little bit like, I'm trying to think. Were those scenes on not Die Another Day, but No Time to Die even. Towards the end, when the lighting looks just perhaps a little bit too bright, and it looks ever so slightly artificial. So yeah, I kind of feel like some of the visuals kind of let it down as well. But I feel like the action was still there, it rattled along a lot. For me, there were obviously it's an indie film. You've got to have those tropes. You got to hit those markers. So you got to have the Wilhelm scream. You got to have bugs crawling everywhere. You got to have a scene where a giant insect or a giant creature comes out of an artifact. He's got to be after a particular artifact. Obviously, you kind of got the short round replacement, who is actually he's quite good. He's no short round, but he tries. And also you kind of got Karen Allen popping up at the end, and John Rhys Davies, who sadly doesn't join Indy on this quest, although I really wanted to. And he was like, "Indy, I've got my passport." I was like, "Come on, Indy and Salah back again." Yes, if anyone could do it, Salah can do it. And my other
I don't think the film could take like two 80-year-old men going and running.
Do you know what it would be like? The end of Bowfinger when they're both doing the sort of kung fu stuff and they try and climb down off that wall. The whole film would be like that.
It would literally be that there was a meme going around recently about like Indiana Jones and the Care Home of Peril or something like that, or Indiana Jones and the dodgy stair lift. So it would be a little bit like that. Bless them. But I kind of think they could have done it had they chopped out Antonio Banderas. Obviously, he was meant to be this old friend of Indy's who we've never seen before, and we're meant to feel intense sorrow when
surprise
he's shot.
as well. It's like a surprise, like, oh my god, it's a name, and
yeah, it's another and he's in it for all of 5 minutes. I mean, no offense to Antonio Banderas, he is a legend.
I mean,
he is Puss in Boots, he is Zorro, and he's a legendary Spanish actor as well. But I kind of feel like a bit redundant. So they really could have chopped him out or minimised him a little bit, in the expense of another actor. So
it's like they gave him the role of any it's like you say, any job that role was like made for like, I don't know, any nondescript actor, and they thought, oh, we've got Antonio Banderas.
That's fine. He does a really good job whilst he's on the screen. He's very handsome, and he does a great job with the role. But it's just the fact that we've not seen this character.
He's done a
before.
good job. He's very handsome. So James would turn and say, "Good handsoming there. Well
Good
done."
handsome, yeah.
The problem is though, the film never gives him anything to there's no there's no like sort of quiet moment where like
there's kind of no tension there. It's like we don't say for example, like it had been John Rhys Davies. That's when they inserted John Rhys Davies into the film. I'll go and see my old friend Salah, and then they kill him off or something like that, like they did with what they did with Felix and No Time to Die, kill him off. So then the stakes would be higher. But it's just the fact that they kind of have obviously a really big name character, really big name actor attached to this character, and they give him very little to do.
And then you shoot him in 5 minutes, and we're supposed to be upset. I don't know if that's so we can understand Phoebe Waller-Bridge not giving a fuck. I don't know, because that was badly written.
Maybe that's true, but that's kind of my gripe with the actor. So they could maybe reduce that section a little bit as well.
Yeah. It doesn't help that she was ogling one of the guys who ended up getting killed.
Quickly on that point, I know we're going to do the film sequentially, but I genuinely thought in that point, because at some point Indy says to her, when she's like laughing and joking, and Indy says, "My friend just died," and she says, "Sorry." It's almost like I feel like Harrison Ford said something on the set, like, "Hang on a minute, we can't leave this unacknowledged."
Yeah, literally.
Because it just didn't feel like it's just like we're supposed to like this woman. To be clear, because there's a lot of stuff out there about it's typical feminist Lucasfilm wanting to hand the series over her. There is one shot where I thought that was in their heads, and I will talk about it when we get there. Broadly speaking, though, that has been overstated, and I've got nothing against her as an actress, but the character as written, I do have problems with.
No, likewise. I just like to sort of state my position. Really, I mean, I think as an actress, as a writer, as a creative, she is fantastic. I just a character just kind of seemed like really kind of incongruous, really, to this film. But otherwise, all the leads, fantastic. But who rattled along for me is sort of classic indie adventure. It does, some of the CGI does go on a little bit. I think, like, for me, the highlight was Mads Mikkelsen definitely as the villain, who's kind of a real nasty piece of work, and Indy sort of going tooth and nail against the Nazis is kind of like what the series does best, really. And it was just fantastic to get back to the kind of like old school adventure, really. Anyway, sorry, I've totally derailed this section. Chris, what did you think? Bring us back to reality, ground us a little bit.
Oh dear.
After my going off and rambling. Sorry.
I mean, I don't think my opinions are really any much more different, though. I will say, I think my experience was probably a bit more negative generally. Broadly speaking, the first like 30 minutes or so were probably the best part of it. A bit video gamey, but it had that kind of like old indie aesthetic. Like it's got a quite visceral sort of action and violence that you expect, that we kind of was missing from Kingdom Crystal Skull. So that was there.
I will say that, although this has more examples of like real shit CG in it, it feels, whether it is or not, I don't know, because they do use the volume and stuff now, but it does actually feel more location heavy than Crystal Skull. So many things, like they'd be in a forest where he sunk into the dry, like not wet sand, the dry equivalent. When he sunk into that, and I remember saying that looks like a set. It all looks like a set, and that's less the case here generally.
Yeah, definitely. And also
they
think
use location a lot more, don't they? But
I also think King Crystal didn't have much of a body count either. When you think of like the amount of fights and action scenes, it was quite like, I don't know, didn't feel
The stakes feel a bit higher here in places.
Yeah,
yeah.
Not that I just want like deaths every 5 seconds, but it's just you feel like
If
right,
an academic secretary's not shot every 5 minutes, Chris checks out the film.
Yeah. So
I don't care if it's her lunchtime. Fucking shoot her.
So general thoughts. Yeah. I thought good cast, mostly wasted. Harrison Ford. I think I kind of realised it when I read Dave's review, the fact that he just feels like, I think he wants to be here, but I don't think it seemed it. It just felt like he was just grumpy old man.
Normally the character wants to be doing it and Harrison Ford doesn't, except when he's playing Indy. Here,
it's the other way around.
It's the other way around. Harrison Ford is really enthusiastically playing a character who wishes he was dead.
Yes, so and yeah, so there's that. I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character was excruciatingly annoying most of the time. Yeah, and this is not a knock on her because I've not seen Fleabag. I've not seen Killing Eve. I think she's written a lot.
Fleabag is good. The second season is way stronger than the first.
Check them out. They're both well worth your time, Chris. Check them out.
They're very much her though. If you don't like her ear, the actress and the feel of her. If you don't like that, you'll hate Fleabag. But if it's only the character you have issues with, you could be fine with it.
Yeah, I question. No, yeah. So I can't really speak to her writing ability or her or acting or a character or whatever. Like I'm kind of judging kind of like from here and what I know of her. Now, I don't really see things are going in. At first, I was a bit apprehensive. Like, is she the right fit for an Indiana Jones movie? But could be wrong. Screen testing and whatnot. Could all work out perfectly. I think when she's first introduced, she seemed okay. I thought, oh right, she seems like more enthusiastic. It's like, oh come on, Indy, let's get back. And then it turns out that she's just like using him and just like leaving the shit and whatever. It's just like, oh right, okay, and you're this for the next 2 hours, right? Okay, great. I get the feeling that she's someone who the people in the entertainment industry really like, but not necessarily. But she isn't like, she's not someone who is like going to take to the more mainstream audience. She's not. Basically, what I'm saying is she's not the right fit. I don't think to saddle up against Indy.
Yeah, I'd probably go along with that.
And that's not a dig at her. It's just like, it's just not that. Now, maybe if she was in had like a smaller scene, like a smaller role, and I'm not saying you should never be in it, like in these sort of films, or whatever. Fine, but I don't know. It just didn't seem the right fit for me, and I kind of agree with Dave's assessment of the character. Just for it felt very uneven. It felt very. It didn't feel properly realised, and I don't think.
Both of our two leads, I think they're going for an arc for both of them, and completely miss, and we'll explain later.
Which makes me think that there must have been so many fucking rewrites on this.
Karen Allen arrives to pay off Indy's arc, but it's an arc that hasn't happened.
Yeah,
and we'll get to it.
So. It just makes with certain things missed, and like the what I like in Dave's review, like this sort of tall Ralph comment. It's like it's funny because they say he's kind of like Short Round. Well, yeah, he is basically exactly like Short Round.
He's Short Round, but puberty has started, so I just called him Tall Round.
Literally,
he's Short Round, but not really Short Round.
Yeah, but right down to they didn't even bother to make a different origin. It's like it's just like
orphan, same as Short Round.
I found him trying to pickpocket me, and he's just stuck me ever since. That's exactly what. We just told you Short Round. It's like, it's just like you do you have no. do you have no imagination at all? Like, seriously. And I didn't find him. I just felt I felt the same for him as did with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. And generally, I just felt numb. Throughout most of it.
The setups and payoffs weren't very smart either. I mean, later in the film, he flies a plane. Now, the dialogue around that is pathetic, and we'll get to that. But it pays off when we first see him. He's sat at a table. Imagine you're at, like, it almost looks a bit like a casino or something, but it's not. It's an auction. But imagine, like, you're in a building a bit like that, and he's sat at a table seeing people in and out of the room where the action's going to take place. And he's practicing as though he's at the cockpit of a plane. That's not obvious till you watch the film the second time, right?
Yeah, I did wonder what he was up to.
And I swear that looked like Alison Brie he was talking to, by the way. There was a man and a woman who were interacting with him as he did that, and the woman looked.
Oh yeah, you were saying, like, now you've reached that altitude. What do you do? And
the woman.
He was another pilot.
The woman looked exactly like Alison Brie, but I couldn't find any. I can't find any evidence she was in this. It was just someone who looked like her, I think. Mm-hmm. So sorry, back to that. So yeah, he made no impression, Chris. Sorry, I do.
Yeah,
he did that. He was like short change, short round.
Yes, exactly.
Short changed. I should have gone with that.
Yeah.
But I feel bad. That's no slight on the actor. It's just that he's short round replacement.
Dave's just rewriting, like, editing his review.
It hasn't been edited.
You can add that to your review. I'll give you that one for free.
Short changed is way better than tall round, but go on. Bollocks. Never mind.
Sorry. I feel bad now. Sorry.
I agonised. Normally I knock these reviews out quite quickly, but I agonised over some of the wording from this, and Chris has just like tossed out something way better when you were gone.
Well, what did I say?
Short changed is way better than tall round.
Well, yeah. But that's Becca's gets credit for that though. She came up with it.
All right. Anyway, carry on. You're talking about your thoughts on this film.
Oh yeah, my thoughts on it. I thought Mads Mikkelsen was good, but again wasted. I thought his Boyd Holbrook was just completely just a non-entity.
Wasted, if anything.
Yeah, just complete.
Literally and figuratively.
Had no character whatsoever. And here's the thing, right? I'm under the impression now that, come on now, I understand in the opening, flashback bit, or whatever you want to call it. I understand, like, sort of like, fighting the Nazis there. I think Nazis are played out now. Come on, like, you moved on to the. Like the 60s now, and you're still going with Nazis. I mean, I could buy Mads Mikkelsen's character, right, as like an ex-Nazi. That makes sense, in a way. I didn't understand how his whole team of henchmen, and by the end of the film they're all like dressed up in their black uniforms and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, but how would they come about? Like, are they like? Have you just formed your own? Like, that's never explained. There's no like.
There's no payoff to that.
There's no like. Oh, are they just like? Have you kept Naziism alive in your own secret thing, and these are your new acolyte kind of thing, or are they like?
What are you replacing it with? Yourself? Are there going to be two of you there now? None of it's explained.
I mean, it's an interesting angle. Like the Nazi plan is to actually kill off Hitler. Do you know what I mean? That's actually an interesting thought. But
on the whole Nazi thing, I've always said this is the fault is the wrong word because I like Last Crusade, but it's the fault of the second and third entries in the series because had Temple of Doom came out, and it's very, very different. It's still dealing with mysticism, the Sankara stones, and the sort of not Buddhist, Hindu elements. Whereas the first one was, first and third ones were about power of God and stuff. That's been lost in the fourth and fifth entries, really.
It's kind of missing, I think. I think there's that kind of.
Yeah, I mean there is in the prologue because it's the spear that speared Jesus when he was on the cross. But the point is that this whole sort of mystical element's been lost for a much more scientific way of looking at things, or proto-science. But had Temple of Doom come out and like the two men who created it not been going through big relationship problems and then looked back on it and thought it was bitter and regretted it, who knows? They may have done another film in 86, 87, 88 that had been different again in a different part of the world, you know. But as it was, I think they wanted to quote unquote course correct after Temple of Doom. So Last Crusade is a bit more like Raiders, both in terms of its MacGuffin and its settings and everything else. And then Crystal Skull comes out. Because it's set in 57, it's kind of difficult to do Nazis, so you do the next best thing, commies during the Cold War. And so I think because the big hits have been film 1 and film 3, Nazis are now part of the DNA of the series, in a way that it might not have been had they done the original plan, made 5 films in the 80s as they originally thought of, and had them all in vastly different settings.
Possibly. I just think, because that leads me to my next comment, and this is kind of a criticism of the entire series, as like the portrayal of Nazis as villains are kind of just like they're just sort of stock bad guys in uniforms. Like there's nothing about like them as Nazis that are actually identifiable as it would just basically told, oh, they're Nazis, they're evil. And in Last Crusade you might get a bit of book burning, and that's about it. You don't really get told that otherwise they're just stock bad guys who are after the thing that Jones is after, and if they get it they'll do bad things. And it's never really elaborated beyond that. And here it's kind of the same. You know, there's you know, I mean, I get the appeal as well because, you know, obviously with history, but also, you know, Nazis are, they look the part as well. You know, they aesthetically they look like they look good, they look smart, and they look like the typical bad guys.
Yes,
and you know, and you got like, you know, history as well. On top of that, you know, the visceral,
and they are iconic. You know, you're looking at Nazi immediately.
It
doesn't take. It's
they've got the branding,
shorthand.
they've got the swastika as well. It's all like, it's perfect. It's like literally perfect.
It's shorthand, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. So I get it, but I think, and you know, this, and you know, and largely you could say this about, you know, portrayal of movies in general. You know, it's a bit lazy to kind of like, okay, but what about them is so evil? You know, like, you know, it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? It's, unless you're dealing with like a World War II film that might delve a bit deeper. But I don't know. I felt like kind of like maybe because you moved on for this one.
I think because with Mads Mikkelsen character, I think it's more because sorry to hijack you there a little bit.
No.
I think it's not just the fact that like he's a Nazi. I think it's obviously just he wants to literally go back and rewrite history, doesn't he? And he says like not that the Allies won the war, but that Germany lost, for example. I mean, there's probably a little bit of racism going in there because he tries to have a dig at the not the butler, but as you know, who comes in and tries to like bring him his food and that whilst they're at the hotel. So there's perhaps a little bit of so a little bit of racism going on there as well. But I think I agree with you, Chris. It's a bit of a trope. It is a bit of a kind of like a one trick pony for sure. But I kind of think it's more that he wants to go back and sort of rewrite history rather than just he's a Nazi because he is obviously a Nazi. But he chews all the scenery though.
I wondered that, but then it's like he never kind of he's just kind of a bit of a dick to him. But then is he being a dick? I mean, like, you know, that scene could have played if he was like a white guy. Do you know what I mean? It could have still been like kind of that kind of. It's based on that resentment of losing. It's not necessarily. Because I did think that. Oh, is he gonna say something like that? Like something like a racial slur.
Well, it's not. It's more the fact that segregation has only just ended. I mean, you're talking to this black guy who's serving you about his wonderful victory when he couldn't even drink from the same drinking fountain as you 5 years before.
It's also like they spent like the first half kind of partly working with FBI, which is largely like, you know, female Shaft. You know, so and
she looks so blaxploitation.
and you know,
she is really cool, doesn't
and
she?
that's
I kind
not-
of feel like she should pop up in A Live and Let Die.
and they don't really say anything. Like, you know, there's not like a comment about that, not even behind her back kind of thing.
It feels extensively rewritten, doesn't it? Remnants of ideas.
Yeah. So
I kind of feel like the two other henchmen, like I don't know, kind of the one with the mustache, and then the 2-meter tall guy.
Yeah, it's like Boyd
I
Holbrook. He's been in a few things. He's in he was in Logan for one.
No, he's really cool. But I kind of feel like they're given it quite a lot to do because they're both like quite physical actors. But I feel like I didn't really get a chance. You know, they're gone before we get a chance to know them really. And they are a little bit faceless for me. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's just it. I mean, I think especially with the big tall guy, you think, oh, we're going to get like a fight with him in Indy, like you would do typically, like this, and that doesn't happen. You think with the lead henchman would have some more significant kind of characterization. He doesn't. He's just kind of there, almost had no lines. So it just feels a bit wanting, I thought, in general. But
it'll be the case all the way through. We'll point to things I'm thinking, well, they didn't really develop that, and there was something there that we should have seen. And what are they going for here? I mean, the other point I would just quickly make, in case I forget to make it during the film, is Indy's abilities, both physical and mental, but I am referring more to the physical. Because sometimes he is outwitted by Helena, but not as much as I feared. If you'd written the quote-unquote feminist, the incel fear of what this film would be, he would have been like a complete fucking idiot, like has happened in a few of these films. We talked about it with Ant-Man and a few other things. But he's as smart as her. She might be a bit ahead of him a couple of times because obviously she knows her own plan and he's not aware. But physically, it's all over the shop. I mean, for example, when the staff at his college, whatever college that's meant to be, is shot and he's over her, they take him like hostage, don't they? And he tries to fight back. He gets up and he's ready to punch, and they immediately like hand on chest and he gives up. And it's almost like the film saying, yeah, we're aware the character's actually younger than him. The character's 70. So, yes, we're aware he's 70. So, of course, he can't beat them all up. And then a few minutes later, they're out in the street and he's taken out henchmen with one punch. It's absolutely all over the shop. There's bits in the final act where he's like helping Helena just fine, despite having a bullet in him. And he's doing fine. And the next minute, when he's carried onto the plane, it's like your granddad being led away. I had an image of when my grandfather was really ill late in his life, not far from his death, a few months away. And I had to like literally take him to the loo. And we'd walk so slowly and stuff like that. And it was a bit like that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Harrison Ford is in that bad health, but it evokes it in places, and yet the next minute he's knocking people out with one punch.
Yeah, but it's like, but at the end of the film he's like 70-year-old and he's like had a shot to the chest, and there is also an establishing shot of him bleeding out, like literally, like, oh my,
he gets kind of shot and then nothing comes of it.
But then we don't know if he's dying or fine the next minute. It's really odd.
And I get movie. Oh yeah, we'll get to the last bit as well on top of all that, but it's just very like uneven, and it's like a good 40 minutes worth of like Harrison Ford like supposedly bleeding out from a bullet wound. Are you thinking, Christ,
how did he not die?
Yeah, and it kind of like chops and changes. He kind of like he finds like he's got new energy, isn't he? He's like, oh, I've got a bit of energy now. Like, oh no, I'm dying. And I can.
Oh, I'm okay.
I can do stuff. And I mean, it gets a bit like that. It's like almost like the movie forgets, like, he's supposed to like quite a serious injury there.
Yeah.
He's been shot in the shoulder.
It's just but a scratch.
It's a flesh wound.
Yes.
No, not your arms off. Oh.
Indeed.
Okay, shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Yes. Okay. So we start.
Yeah. Oh.
I was surprised, just very quickly, I was surprised to see, I was at once really pleased and then disappointed in the same shot, because we saw the Paramount logo, but it didn't dissolve to anything.
Yeah, it didn't dissolve into like a mountain.
A mountain or a molehill or anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, quite.
I was a bit disappointed by that, but yeah, I imagine...
It could have been the tip of the castle.
It could have been. There were ways to work with that. I mean, particularly, I don't know. You could have had an establishing shot of the train first. Who knows? But yes, whatever. The point is, it doesn't. But where do we start? Because we don't start on the train, do we?
No, we basically start like a castle somewhere, don't we? Where like the Nazis are pulling out. They've got all this artifact. One of them's like is it a tip of a spear? The lance of.
It's if you think back to if you think back to fiction, making no comment on the veracity of religion, by the way, but if any of you've seen the Passion of the Christ, when he's on the cross, he's speared in the side. It's really very graphic in the film. It's that spear. Not the movie prop from the Passion of the Christ, I'm saying, but in the story, obviously, Jesus was speared in the side while he was on the cross, and that's meant to be the tip of that spear.
Oh,
it's the Lance of Longinus.
Lance of Longinus,
and that's instantly a lot more like of a good like MacGuffin to chase.
That's very Indiana Jones.
It is.
But I'm not too upset it isn't the main... I mean, because it invokes Jesus, it's a pretty high-level artifact. But, the prologue of Last Crusade, they're chasing a different artifact than they do for the rest of the film. So I don't mind it as a little scene... I don't mind it as a little scene setter.
I do think they missed a trick, because with Raiders, it was like kind of Judaism, and then with... Temple of Doom, it leaned more into Hindu, and then Crusade with Christianity. It's like, well, they could have leaned into other religions for the other series, like Islam or Buddha, those kind of things. I think it's just a bit of a missed opportunity to sort of keep it in that tradition, really. But rather than make up like, I don't know, aliens and then some made up dial.
Yeah. I don't know too much about this this particular MacGuffin in terms of. I'm presuming it existed.
I think it's a real thing. Hold on, please bear with me.
Yeah, yes. It does. Used to predict astronomical positions. And
it's like the world's oldest analog computer, and it is actually a thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think most of it is actually in the museum. Hold on.
They still would have used it to download porn.
Probably.
It belongs in a museum.
This porn is analog.
This porn is analog.
Yeah. It is a real thing. Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. So
please wait.
They are.
Talk about yourself.
They are. So
does it transfer you to the Battle of?
We'll get to all that later. That's
the Siege of Syracuse.
That I find that all ridiculous. Not because it's far fetched, because I mean we had aliens in the last film, interdimensional beings in point of fact. We had 1,000-year-old Night of the Crusade in the film before. We had melting people. It's not the lack of veracity of it. It's just how poorly it fits into the plot and Indy's characterization. But we'll get to that. But yeah, the spears are fake.
Oh, here we go. The Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek hand-powered orrery, as described the oldest known example of an analog computer used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance.
You say hand-powered? It's
hand-powered?
Can it be powered by one hand? I'm asking for a friend.
It could also be used to track the 4-year cycle of athletic games, which is similar to the Olympiad cycle of the Olympic Games. Fragment A is on Wikipedia. Fragment A, front and rear visible, was the largest gear in the mechanism, approximately 13 centimeters, 5.1 inches in diameter. James really make love to me all the time in England. Left day and night going about the mechanism. So yeah, apparently the majority of it is in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. So the artifact was among wreckage retrieved of a shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera in 1901. So it's real, apparently. I don't know.
Real.
I don't know
It's real, but the time thing and
it's
where
Archimedes,
bits were buried
so.
is kind of horseshit, but whatever.
But yeah, it's based on a real thing, essentially. So yeah, it'd be real, y'all. Props to JBR member Ralph Lewandowski for that information. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So yeah, in trying to find this spear, the spears are fake, but they've got part of the dial. And then him and Toby Jones need to jump from the train because he's been taken hostage by one of the Nazis. Indy frees him, and they jump from the train. After a fight on the roof of the train, which includes... Now, when Mads Mikkelsen is revealed, Jürgen Voller, in 1969, we first see him side on. I expected him to turn and his face to look like fucking Two-Face from The Dark Knight. Because he takes a whack in the face at about 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
He's not scarred at all
No,
by
I
this.
thought he'd have a great big gash down one side of his face. But I kind of thought he was... I don't know why.
And the only gash
I
I saw at the cinema that day was in Asteroid Kingdom. Sorry.
Yeah, for some reason I thought he was decapitated. I was sort of like, why did I think that? I know it's a bit grim. But I thought surely his head's off.
No, pretty much unhurt.
So obviously he must have used it to travel through time, avoid the accident, and you know.
I love the fact they're on the top of this train and the Allied bombers are like, you know, trying to blow the bridge and everything like that. Toby Jones is waving to it. Like, what do you expect them to do? Throw down a rope for you?
Hi.
It's a plane. What are they going to do? Land on the top of the train? What are you doing? But that's the setup to this. They've had a little contretemps over this dial in 1944. It's wanted by Indy and Toby Jones' character Shaw, and it's wanted by Mads Mikkelsen's character Voller, who we know is a mathematician stroke physicist. Okay,
You helped about B2 rocket.
And that is by far the best bit of this film done. We've got another 2 hours to go.
I wonder, as you say, Dave, if we just had that story and all the rest of it, I wonder if that would have been a nice self-contained adventure.
I just think if they'd said we're going to release a live-action-ish Indiana Jones film, in that we've got all the stars you know in it, but we are going to pretend it's 1944 and it may not look perfect everywhere. If the film had been that, I think we'd have all gone fair enough.
Yeah, just like accept that. Well, we know, you know, Harrison's like old now, but we can de-age it; it'll be fine. And then we'll go.
Yeah. In terms of the CG during this sequence, it was worse when he moved. It was worse in the brightly lit scenes, sort of within the carriages rather than up on the roof. And it was bad when you had other officers of a similar age in the same shot. So there's a bit where he's on the screen with two Nazis behind him, like one over each shoulder, and his face looks completely differently lit. It reminds me of when you suddenly had effect shots where you had to do them analog and there were several video passes. So you'd be watching Blade Runner and everything would look all right, or Back to the Future, and then suddenly you'd get a flying car and it would look like several degrees of resolution worse because there'd been more video passes to composite all these effects. Indy's face looked like the only bit that was lit different from the rest of the scene. But I was willing to give it a pass. After the first 2 or 3 minutes, because I'd just seen him in the trailer, that shot of the hood coming off. So I thought, that's going to look flawless. So once I started noticing the seams, it really bothered me. But after 2 or 3 minutes, you unconsciously, because I don't remember literally thinking it, but you unconsciously think, let it go.
Yeah, it's mostly dark in the stark setting anyway.
Yeah, and what I'm not sure of is, did they use a body double for Harrison Ford? Because in the present day, he's moving like an old man in lots of the shots. Some of that may be an acting choice, and we'll get to the first. When we say present day, we mean 1969, present day to the main part of the film. When we get to the present day portion of the story in a minute, I'll make a comment on that, because it may It may be his age, but it may actually be partially an acting choice as well, because of where the actor is in life, or whether.
I think it's quite interesting as well. Like I've seen quite a few, like obviously behind the scenes photos that are available, like doing the rounds on social media as well.
Yeah.
I didn't realise they had a mixture of obviously the dots that they used, like on No Time to Die, for example. But a lot of different actors in that use like wore masks and that as well. Not just like face coverings, but actual like masks. Like of Harrison Ford's face, which I think is really interesting as well, as in terms of all the stunt actors who did like the horse scenes, and you kind of more other scenes that perhaps maybe his insurance wouldn't let him do. But I think I thought that was quite interesting as well.
I saw a picture of Harrison with all the dots on his face.
Yeah.
So that seemed to be
DAC.
outside as it was coming to light. So I wonder if that was the last bit where he was walking away with Toby Jones.
Probably. Also, you kind of other creators have also mentioned you kind of got a disconnect between like a young-looking Indy and 80-year-old sounding Harrison Ford.
The voice is a problem.
But it's fine. I mean, he sounds quite gruff anyway as a character.
He would get away with it more. I mean, the most exaggerated example I've ever heard was the video game From Russia with Love.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because they used.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm trying to think of in time now. Sean would have been about 74, probably.
Yeah, he was in his 60s or 70s, wasn't he? But obviously
it came out in 2005, but his birthday was a certain way through the year, and obviously voices tend to be done first. So depending on lead times, he was in his mid-70s, and of course he's in the body of 33-year-old equivalent video game sprite. James Bond, and he sounded old because he'd had nodules on his throat as well, so his voice sounded older than even he was. So he sort of sounded 90 when he was 75, and it didn't sound right, and it doesn't sound right on Harrison either. But it's not as bad as it could have been. It's not as bad as Sean Connery, frankly, as an old man.
No, that's true.
But that's it for the prologue. We then immediately cut to this apartment, and this is where I immediately start feeling sad. He's living in, I think it's Manhattan, but I've not thought about it. I'm not quite sure where Hunter College is.
It's Edinburgh, doubling as New York or something, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know which borough of New York. I didn't even think about it, to be honest with you.
I don't think it says really.
It doesn't really say, and we don't see like Times Square or anything, for example.
No, we need like titles. 1933.
Hunter College is
1969.
Hunter College is in Manhattan. Now, he's fallen asleep in his chair, and it's morning, and the first thing he does is make a drink and put some kind of spirits in it, hard liquor.
Irish is up that coffee.
So this is what I'm saying about an acting choice. He's fallen asleep in a chair, and the first thing he gets up, and I think he might even take the t-shirt off or something, but his whole body looks like that of an old man, and he moves like one.
It's that contrast, isn't it? Obviously, you see him like younger, sort of the age and everything. Obviously, it might be him, it might be a younger actor.
But is that Harrison Ford?
It's meant to be that contrast, isn't it? Here he is.
Or is it Indy's fallen asleep in a chair and he's in bad condition because he's drinking and he's not interested at the moment? I don't know.
Bad condition because he's nearly going to retire soon.
But it's not a nice contrast, and this apartment is depressing. Now
it's meant to be like that, though. I think it's meant to be. Oh, look, it's 30 years later, and
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Okay. So he goes in and he's teaching a class, and I found this sad as well.
You missed the first introduction where it's like blasted with the Beatles.
And exactly.
And he's basically the old man trope of like turn that shit down.
That's
I told you, you're playing your music. Kids playing your music too loud. And to be fair, they are like playing it quite loud, and they are.
It's ridiculoly loud.
And
it's on Saturday.
And also in his defence.
No, I'm joking.
And also in his defence as well, they are so obnoxious.
They are quite annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The woman who answered the door, just lots of things I don't know if they're deliberate. Like the woman who answered the door, she's a redhead, but Christ, she looks like a young Karen Allen. She's got the same smile. Karen Allen's got quite a distinctive smile. And it was, I don't know, it's almost like reminding Indy of his youth sort of thing. And he's just, I don't know. I find that we're off to a bit of a sad start, and it sort of gets worse in that he's told it's Moon Day, and it's the day the astronauts are going on a parade. after they've come back to Earth after landing on the moon, which we know happened in July 1969, and we know several of the events of this film are the August. So that's when we are in time. I could never see an Indy film in this era, but obviously with some of the time shenanigans, and also they go to places like Tangier, it actually fits slightly better for the most part than 1957 did. It looked odder amongst greasers, and on that sort of fake estate where he got in the fridge, that looked way weirder.
The fake housing, yeah, definitely. I think because we associate Indy kind of like 30s, 40s.
Yeah,
kind
whereas
of era,
Tangiers is a bit timeless. Tangier's timeless, and they put him in a tuk-tuk anyway. We'll get to that.
Octopussy vibes all around.
But the next thing is he goes to work, and he's helpfully lecturing on this very battle, Archimedes and all the rest of it. He's lecturing on that. I picked that up second time, not the first time.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's a nice contrast as well. I mean, it is very sad. I mean, like for example, can
I just finish the point on what I found sad about him lecturing?
Go for it.
The first time we ever see him lecture, the women are rapt by him.
Yeah, exactly.
And they blink,
that's the contrast. And
they're
this time
falling
they're bored
asleep.
and inattentive, and they couldn't really care. And it's just like, oh, my heart breaks.
Yeah.
Literally, that's the point I was going to make. Literally, it's just like it's a contrast, and I think that's the whole. It is sad, it is depressing, but I think that's the main sort of theme of the film. Like,
it would be fine if he was vibrant.
It's like Bond, he's kind of wrestling with his own irrelevance.
Funnily enough, Jez Butterworth was a writer on Skyfall, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he wrote this, and a lot of people have said that Skyfall incorrectly, and I've done podcasts and articles on it. And when I say incorrectly, I mean in my opinion, of course, because there is a counter argument. But I've never thought Skyfall was about him being old. He's a peak agent in the pre-title. He gets injured and just loses his mojo, in Austin Powers terms. And when you notice he's got his mojo back is in the courtrooms, not the courtroom scene, the committee scene, where she does her poem. Yep. He comes back, and Mallory, looks at him concerned, and he winks at him, and you're like, no, he's all right. He's basically saying, yes, I know you saw me miss all my shots, but I'm here again. Now, had there been an equivalent in this film where we go, he's back. He wasn't actually too old, or he is aging, but he wasn't actually too old. He just lost interest in life. But he didn't. Right at the end of the film, he's still saying, leave me here to die. So it doesn't pay off properly. So I feel sorry for him throughout the entire running time of the film.
See, for me, I mean, and you are right in terms of where Indy is as a character. In terms of like the attitude with the other kid, I thought it's like this is just like this is the problem of society of like of where kids are like, because before they were like he had loads of women sort of pining after him because he was like the young hot professor. Now he's like older, but they were still kind of interested in what he was saying.
He was a good lecturer from the little bits we saw,
and I don't think. I think that part of that world weariness, and it's just like, well, you just look at the state of these kids now. They're just not putting in the work. They don't seem to care. Like he mentions, has anyone done any reading, and none of them have. You know what I mean? And I just and contrast with that with also the obnoxious like kids downstairs in his apartment.
Yeah,
who were just like. Yeah, just like party. It's probably just how quickly society has like
moved away from him.
Yeah, well, moved away from him, but also probably got worse. And maybe it's my old man talking now, but
I was going to say that does sound like something a much older filmmaker would make. But yeah, okay. But in the room, you've got Helena, who we're going to be introduced to in a bit, and she's answering all the questions no one else has done the reading.
She's done the reading, no.
Now, of course, part of it, them not doing the reading, is to enable Indy to give us a little bit of exposition. And when I say exposition, I mean on the coursework, just because it will pay off a little bit later, or you're more likely to notice it on a second viewing. He tells you a little bit about how advanced that era was, and actually sets us up for what Archimedes has actually invented. And we get a bit of a backstory. He even actually says, I'm not talking about Syracuse in here, I'm talking about Syracuse in Sicily. And it's just setting some of the scene for us. So it isn't just about old man shouts at cloud. So we get all the background of the dial, and it's split in half and everything else. He goes to a bar afterwards. We see his retirement first. They give him a carriage clock, which is the most cliched present to give someone retiring. I know at least 3 people have retired that have been given carriage clocks over the last 30 years.
Yeah, sort of a hackneyed present, isn't it?
Well, my aforementioned grandfather. That's what they gave him when he retired after all these years at wherever it was he was.
Yeah.
Which he immediately gives to someone on the street and heads off to a bar. It's a bit odd that he's like retired right in the middle of the course, because he's saying this will be on the exam and stuff. It's like, well, who's going to fucking mark it if you're leaving there? But anyway. And she goes to approach him in a bar, and as I say, I just find the whole body language here very sad. He seems a bit doddery here, and he doesn't feel consistently doddery in every scene, but he does here when he's approached at the bar. When he's sat with her, it's not as bad. And she basically says, I'm a graduate in archaeology as well. I'm his daughter. You last saw me when I was 12, and I'm trying to find the dial. And he says, well, it drove your dad crazy. Why do you want to find it? And she says, well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and this is like the first... this first interaction feels okay here. Because...
Yes, it does.
She in a way, she's like trying to oh, come on. Sure. Like, I'm not really selling this, am I? She
also seems at this point as well. Her introduction scene, she's answering all the questions, and now she's like trying to get him involved on a mission, if you like, an archaeological mission, not a superhero type mission. On the very day he's retiring, on the day he's like, I don't really have a purpose anymore. At this point, she comes off more as bookish than anything else. Well, she's just been around sort of final year archaeology students. It's not even her course, and she knows all the answers. She is clearly either gifted or extremely hardworking, or some combination of both at this point. She does say a few things that nearly gives herself away a bit. She talks about destroying it. And then he's like, are you sure you don't remember the last time you saw me? I don't know when that flashback comes, because we do get a second flashback to London. Now, I'm guessing on timelines. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is coming up on about 40, but I think the character's about 30. On the basis that he had a very young daughter during the war, because he mentions having family. And it's the sort of thing you'd be talking about young kids at that point. And I think it's about 7 years later when she's 12. I think she says something like, it's been 18 years. So I think putting that all together, the second flashback is about 51. And it's where he's going crazy trying to, find out about this dial. And he takes it away. She says it needs to be destroyed. It's got One Ring overtones at that point. It's like, it's not poisoned your mind, does it? She remembers that, destroy it. And it turns out he's got it in the storeroom at the college, his half.
Yeah.
Is it at this point we cut to meeting Mads Mikkelsen?
Yeah, so he's in a hotel. So yeah, 'cause it kind of bounces around. So he's in a hotel somewhere. We see
and we only see the side of his face that wasn't hit first. I'm so expecting him to turn and have some big scar, but no.
So
he just looks like Mads Mikkelsen, 18 years on from Casino Royale or whatever.
His hair's a bit greyer.
bit greyer, slightly more jowly, but he's easier to de-age just because although there's definitely evidence of aging, his facial structure is still the same. Whereas although Harrison Ford still looks like Harrison Ford, there is that meme about Harrison Ford being happy and sad at the same side, depending on which side of the face he's looking at. Just look that meme up, happy and sad Harrison. And it's the fact that his face isn't the same shape. You've got to do more work. Whereas Mads Mikkelsen fundamentally looks maybe 5 to 10 pounds heavier, that's all. But he has the CIA working for him. Although Chris said FBI, maybe it is. It's one of the two.
Yeah, I think it's CIA. Oh,
and he's got a couple of American henchmen working for him. who are dressed strangely like License to Kill era. But there you go. And he is working at a university. Is it in Florida? He does say at one point. I forget which state, or is it Colorado?
It might be Florida because he helped them get to the moon.
But he's helped NASA with the moon because he's a genius mathematician.
Yeah.
And he feels he's of use to the American government. But later on, that agent says to him, they've had what they want from you now. And his job is to go back and carry on being a professor. He talks about a Nazi victory, but he's kind of got quite a nice life, actually. But there you go. He's there for the celebration day because he was instrumental in getting them there. So if there's a big parade in New York, I'm still picturing it's going to have that green rod from the Simpsons episode in the middle of the... You remember, Becca?
Inanimate carbon rod.
Inanimate carbon rod is...
In rod we trust.
Yeah.
It wasn't me, it was the inanimate carbon rod.
They are looking for Helena at this point because she's the daughter of Shaw and he's done all the research. It's a bit like Henry Jones Sr.'s book of notes on where the Grail was. He's got books full of notes of his study.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Grail. And I noticed, I don't know if there was some kind of link between like Grail diary and the way that Helena's got everything stored in her brain.
It's the same basic principle. Archaeologists take notes. It's as simple as that. And
did
she
they
is a bit of a genius.
Harrison Ford again, obviously for the scenes on the Nazi horde train, and then again when he goes to see.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I wondered.
Yes, they did, and again he's grayer. Yes,
so he could look a little bit older.
It looks a little better. It's still got that slightly blurred fakiness on the face, but it's better. This, if you go back in time from now, this is effectively trying to recreate sort of Hollywood homicide era, K-19, the Widowmaker era Harrison Ford, as opposed to sort of mid-90s. At this point, so that's where we get the flashback. But the point is, Helena and that are looking for the... he's going to show her where the bit of the dial is. At the same point, she's been spotted by the CIA people, and the henchman of the CIA lady are sent to the college to retrieve them. And that's the point.
Yeah. And
it becomes... And immediately we see the first floor...
Who's the guy who's with the CIA? Is it a politician of some sort? There's never really...
I don't have a clue who that man is.
Yeah, the guy's on crutches.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we kind of see him once or twice, don't we? And then we don't see him again.
I think he might be Wilson Mason, the government agent's boss.
Yeah, it could be actually. Yeah, it could be her boss.
But none of this. That's where it feels so heavily rewritten. That was probably clear.
Yeah, he's inserted in there, but we don't see him.
Fragments get lost as you rewrite, but they go after the dial. They're willing to kill for it. We know that because they killed two of the university staff. On another point, we later find it's not clear at that point, but later we're told Phoebe says to him, "You're now in the frame for murder," which never pays off at the end of the film. He still wants
continuity error as well. When those two staff members are shot, they're in different positions when we see them later on in the film.
True, absolutely.
Continuity error.
The woman particularly is in a completely different position. Wrong part of the corridor. She's moved back into the left.
I assumed they just moved her for whatever.
No, she's been moved back into the left.
The continuity error.
Yeah, but so they're now in a storeroom being attacked, and she escapes with the dial and locks Indy in there. And this is a 70-year-old man with people who are willing to kill. So that is a serious black mark on the character. She don't care if he's killed at this point. Or at least they haven't written to show us that.
Yeah, at least there's an air of mystery about what's going on. Yeah. And you could argue that she wasn't aware of them killing. She just thought, CIA, it'll be fine.
Fine. Okay, so he's now taken hostage. And he's taken out into the street. Is he put in the van at any point? Yes, he is. He's put in the back of a van. But the van gets caught by a police sort of cordon, and they have to get out and travel on foot. At that point, he escapes. He's back to being able to knock people out in one punch, and to escape them, he sort of rides off on a police horse. And although there's a lot more to that action sequence, that's the bones of it. And then he's sort of stuck in the town, in the parade celebrating the astronauts. He escapes in and out of a subway. It's not a bad sequence, but the gist is he's now in the town in the evening, and he's obviously called for help, and that help arrives in the person of Salah, who is now a cab driver who's emigrated from Cairo to America, and apparently it was at some point during the war. So he's lived in the United States with his new family for about 25 years driving cabs.
Considering he was like one of the best diggers in Cairo, to go from that to a cab driver, I feel like it's a step down for Salah.
But he's a remarkably well-informed, He
is, but I feel like
it's a step down.
Sometimes you'll get in the back of a taxi. This used to happen to me at one of my old jobs. I'd get a taxi into the station to go to London with work because it was national where I was working at that point. And occasionally I'd get into a taxi and they'd tell me something that one of the bosses from my organisation had been talking about in the back of the cab. So occasionally you'd get highly classified
information.
Because somebody at director level had been stupid enough to talk about it in a taxi, and taxi drivers talk because it's a big currency for them.
They know all of it.
There's been rumours about football clubs and managers and God knows what that way over the years. So
really?
He has a lot of classified agents in his cab because he's completely aware that Helena has got an arrest warrant for selling contraband in Tangier. I mean, that's quite impressive, knowing that and being able to take Indy. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of the hand-waving Orsi and Kurtzman type plotting in this film where you'd say, how do they know that? And the answer would be, don't worry about it. Salah is ridiculously well-informed, but it's an excuse to just have him as a cameo.
Yeah, he's wasted. He really is wasted. Seriously, and the same, thing goes for Karen Allen as well. I mean, no offense to Antonio Banderas, they could chop him out, minimize his role. He is wonderful, but they could really do without him.
Well, they did. Sorry, I do wonder if he was ever honest.
I feel bad.
Antonio Banderas thinks of his end result of what was in this film. At some point, he was approached. It's great to see him. He elevates performance in whatever he does, but I just kind of feel like. No offense to him for sure. No, he's got quite a bit of charm for the tiny bit he's there, but he's Antonio Banderas, and admittedly, roles can vary in size, but it's slightly too big to be called a cameo. It's a role in the film, and so I do wonder what he thinks of his role in this film, having been approached to play it, and lots of rewrites.
It's kind of like a glorified cameo, isn't it? You almost like
it is, but it's slightly too big to be a cameo, and it's slightly too pivotal to the plot to be a cameo. So it's just a small part. But whatever. The point is, this for Salah is definitely a cameo. It's the point that yes, he got some exposition, but it's an excuse to have Salah on the screen again. There's something a bit greatest hits about parts of this film. So we now move to Tangier, which I must admit, given it's 1969. 1969, I think I was thinking.
Imagine.
No, because there's a Cinzano advert on the wall at some point, which immediately made me think of the advertising on the boards in Moonraker. And that's where I got 1979
I saw
from.
that, and then I randomly, because I thought, I recognise the name, and I stuck it into YouTube, and it came up with those.
Leonard Rossiter.
Yeah, Leonard Rossiter.
Leonard Rossiter, if you want to look it up, folks, and for people not from this country, Leonard Rossiter. It was him and Joan Collins. Leonard Rossiter was a comedy actor largely from the 70s. He died in 1984. He had undiagnosed hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And he was on stage, and he died at the age of 54 or something like that. And he did several sitcoms, but the two he's best known for are Rising Damp, which had Richard Beckinsale in it. And you'll know Kate Beckinsale, his daughter, from lots of films, including Van Helsing and the Underworld films. She was his daughter. And he was also known for one called Reggie Perrin.
Original Perrin, yeah.
Yeah, but what's it called? Something
Rise
of
and Fall,
the Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin. So he was a top sitcom actor, and he did adverts for Cinzano with Joan Collins, who's best known to most people these days for Dynasty in the 60s. In the 80s, sorry, Alexis Colby or whatever she was called.
He's also in 2001 Space Odyssey as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there were lots of comedy adverts for Cinzano in the 70s and 80s. That's what we're getting at.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, associated with the 80s randomly.
But that's the only thing that made me think of sort of 60s and 70s advertising. Tangier has a timeless air which really suits, and a lot of the indie films have been in hot climates as well, so it really does suit them going to Tangier. She's going to try and sell it at an auction. And again, what is this all about? She's clearly well informed. She's done all the study for her father, with her father. She's learned all these languages, and we're led to believe she's just going to sell it for a few $100,000. There's something about this that's just so inconsistent in the writing of the character. She's either playing a long game of bluff, which the film may be going for, or she's a complete sociopath.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a mixture of, I think it's just like
poor execution.
Poor execution, like the character not being finished, probably a bit of improvisation on the day, maybe.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't quite gel. Like,
she's a former fiance turns up wanting to behead her because he's the son of a gangster who said kill her, and she's double crossed him, having said she was in love because she wanted something from him, use of the hotel or something. And so you've got a three-way, not that sort of three-way, between him and Indy, and then Voller's lot, and then this Raheem's lot, and it all gets very complicated as they fight over tuk-tuks. At the same time, we are introduced to Teddy, who seems to be controlling access to this auction that doesn't end up happening. He reveals that Voller's a Nazi because they recognise it's the first time he's seen him face to face, and he recognises him. Voller's like, have we met? But I'm assuming they both recognise each other. And that's it, really. It just becomes a big chase from here.
Yeah, and at the same time, wasn't it around here when she's like making like sort of very flattering comments about herself, like
I'm beautiful and all this.
Yeah, and it's like, does anyone really say that?
Beauty is in. There's two things about that. Now, we're not going to body shame anyway. One, it's not the type of podcast we are or have ever been. But I don't think of Phoebe Waller-Bridge as a beauty. Now, that's not to say you couldn't meet her in life and be attracted to her. That's not what I'm saying at all. But she's not the right energy for like a bombshell in a film. But even if you let that go, Chris is perfectly right. Who describes themselves that way? It's odd, but it's almost like, again, it's a bit like in Die Another Day where she sits down with M and M says, what do you know of James Bond? And I always said the dialogue was like it was written for a trailer or a plot synopsis where you're describing a character. And I felt like it's almost like it's the bit that does feel like modern Lucasfilm, where she's trying to sort of sell herself to the audience almost. It doesn't work for me.
Because she could be like literally the hottest girl around right now. It would still like feel like, really, that seems a bit odd. That doesn't seem right.
If that was Margot Robbie, it still wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Right,
It'd just be, you're a bit full of yourself, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's like she's meant to be so charming. We've just seen that she's wrapped this other guy round her little finger. Having to talk yourself up like that isn't the way that sort of thing works. There are women who can do that.
And you've got this guy like saying like, pretty much like saying, come back, why won't you marry me? Like, as if it's like, why are you that bothered? Honestly.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. And if you're the son of a gangster, you've got influence. You've got no problem getting people. So we're supposed to believe that she's this amazing. And it's one of only two bits of the film where I think they're kind of testing the water on a Helena spin-off. And I'll point to the other one later because I think I've been around YouTube and there are people I even like. I wouldn't even remotely call them incels, where they have talked like there's some mass conspiracy to emasculate men in Lucasfilm. And I can sort of see where it comes from. And I definitely think we're seeing a bit of that in Marvel. I do think there are too many leading men who are idiots in their own films. See Thor and Ant-Man for details. And there's a genius girl in every family. So there's something to it. But I don't think that's by and large what this film is going for. But there's twice I think you're testing the water on a Disney Plus series, and this is one of them. I think this
I
is
kind of
one
think
where
there
I'm
is
like,
going to be a larger Indiana Jones universe.
they have talked about that.
They're
So
option for.
I don't think they're trying to replace Indiana Jones. I think they accept he's not going to last forever. They're not sure on a recast of that. But you
Okay,
could,
no,
but you
MCU.
could do something in the present day of the universe, obviously late 60s, early 70s, and come up with different characters. That's a possible. But it would be because there's something very episodic about her adventures. She's gone there and upset this bloke, and then she's in like New York, and later she'll be somewhere else. It screams TV show, but I don't know that's what they're going for. But you've got this big sort of action sequence here anyway, and I'll say that in my written review, I described good, bad, and debatable parts of the film, and I put action in both good and bad. Good because I think this is well shot. I think this is a good action sequence. It's the one bit of the film that could stand with any of the classics in the series, in that it's got all the elements of an Indiana Jones action sequence. He's not 100% in control of his environment. That's often true, be it a plane or a tank or whatever. He's quite often in battered up vehicles of some description, be it a tank which has seen, a lot of damage from the war. A tuk-tuks are a bit sort of comedy and unique to that part of the world as well. Well, not necessarily that part of the world because they have them in India as well, but certain parts of the world anyway. And then you've got like them using the environment. There's a bit where they drive past something and she hits it to get all the sort of like bamboo or whatever it is to fall to the floor. When they are hit by vehicles, it seems painful to them. It's improvised. It feels like an Indiana Jones action sequence. So I put it in the good because it runs on a lot. It's got lots of phases to it. Bit like, it's not as good as, but it reminded me of Mission Impossible Fallout, where they've got an action sequence in Paris that has several stages. There's like a car stage and a bike stage and so on. It's got stages to it. I thought it was very good, but I also stuck it in the bad because I don't know if it's because I can see the effects at times, or because they're talking to each other calmly. He's sort of playing the game of shouting to her, but you wouldn't be able to hear each other on a busy street in Tangier, over engines and stuff. But I never feel any peril. So I stuck it in the bad as well. It's a well-shot sequence, but I'm just admiring the logistics of it rather than feeling excited by it.
Just going through the motions.
But it's better than just going through the motions, but it didn't excite me at the same time.
Yeah.
They end up on a plane. Waller and Mason end up on a plane.
Yes, because they've been causing too much chaos. So it is the FBI, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The FBI, Federal Bureau, they're interested in the states, aren't they? So the CIA is. I would think it's the CIA. I'm not going to swear to it though. It doesn't matter.
Government agents, shall we say?
American government agents. Yeah.
And they're bringing them back because they're just too off the rails, and they just said no.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm not going to Florida, so he demands to go.
Is it Florida?
No, I don't. Whichever, he doesn't want to go there anyway. They end up killing her anyway on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a real shock that she dies because she's. Yeah. I know she's kind of got some kind of moral compass going on, hasn't she? But I just kind of feel like, oh my god. Yeah. I just feel it's a real shock.
Well, so I was waiting for it to either happen, either for them to kill her or just like
she'd have looked at a
just
place
lose her completely.
When you're in the final act, when the Grail's open, the Grail's drunk from all the arcs opened. I couldn't picture a CIA agent in this film's equivalent. So it didn't really. It surprised me when it happened in that it sort of came out of nowhere. But it didn't. It did on paper. I didn't expect it to get to the end of the film. But they go to Greece now anyway. They're all heading to Greece. The deal between Indy and Helena is that she knows all the sort of codes.
That was the other thing as well.
And Indy knows where the diver is. What, she knows everything.
Yeah, it was that. It's not just that. It's not just because it's not like I'll memorize it. Well, all the important stuff anyway. And just kind of gave a derogative sort of like Oh, well, a lot of it's irrelevant, but you know that kind of thing.
I'm
That
that
kind of
clever. I
know-it-all.
know the difference as
Yeah,
well.
it's that kind of like, oh, I'm not only can I memorize everything that's important, but I'm actually I'm smart enough to sort of just like
And
sort of
I
dismiss it
know,
all like
and I absolutely know what code it's going to be written in, what we're looking for, because they're looking for basically a code that gives them the map to the second part, because the dial's in 2 bits, yeah. So it's just basic. You've seen this in the Tomb Raider series, both on computers and films. You've seen it in Indy before. You know, X marks the spot. There is some way of finding a code that gets you the location of something. He knows somebody with boats because he knows with a boat because he knows who can take them there, and she knows what she thinks they're looking for from everything she's read. So she's got the information, he's got the means. That means being Antonio Banderas' boat and character. Teddy is dragging along with them at this, around here we find out he's the street kid. But I don't want to be nasty to a young actor, but the character makes no impression on me whatsoever. It's Short Round, he is not. And I could see how Short Round would be divisive. He was quite a loud character, but I mean, he certainly was distinctive in a way this kid is not. But they go on the boat to go to find this bit that's buried under the ocean that was being carried out by Archimedes on a boat or whatever it was, and it's sunk and it's on the floor of the ocean, and presumably it will give them the location to the second part. And in ancient times, that's what they were looking for. All this takes too long. The film does drag in spaces. Basically, we know they got to go down to the floor of the ocean, at which at this point is, I think, 300 feet. So round about 100 meters, a little bit less than. They've got to go to the floor. They've got to do like a dive. This guy immediately knows how to get them to avoid the bends, which fine, whatever. That's hand waving plot as well. So no one goes, what about the bends? But it takes so long for them to get down there. It reminded me of For Your Eyes Only. I love For Your Eyes Only, but there was a bit where they went underwater to get the ATAC, and honestly, 5 minutes worth of film and plot took 20 minutes. And that's
because they do like the horror movie scene.
That's
well.
like this, though. I remember when we watched For Your Eyes Only, and I was very complimentary to that film. It's my favourite Roger Moore film, favourite Roger Moore Bond film, certainly. And it is one of my favourites in the series. I kind of find it like a sister film to The Living Daylights in tone. And although it spiritually kind of follows on from Majesty's a bit, because it's in snow and everything else, and he visits the grave. But the bit where they get the ATAC, people start getting bored with it. And I must admit, although I never really got bored, you could have covered that in 3 to 5 minutes, and it takes about 15 to 20. And I felt that with this sequence, and I was starting to think at this point, get on with it, please, because we know what's going to happen. We've all seen films. It's like Tomorrow Never Dies. They're going to come up from their dive to find the evil person on the boat.
Yeah, you can kind of see what's going to happen. Also, I kind of felt like the bit, where Teddy, I'm trying not to call him Short Chain Short Run, Teddy goes, oh yeah, eels just look like snakes, and Indy's like, no.
Well, so they're going to get attacked by those.
Well, exactly. I say it's one of those. It's and it's a sort of
Great
trope. You got to hit those beats as you go through. Kind of it's a bit of a trope of the Indy series. You kind of got to have a giant snake or lots of insects, slug or spiders or something like that, come out of this relic. So it's basically a gross out moment, isn't it?
So I'm going to
I'm
just going to speed us on this bit because I think it's too long-winded, but we will get the points up.
Wind it up. The
points are not the whole film, just this bit. But the point is, they are captured, and in sort of fighting back a little bit, Antonio Banderas' character is shot first in the knee, but then in the chest. So he's killed, and then the guy that Phoebe was perving over, because that's a really strange character trait. We don't know what she is really that way. Is killed, and Phoebe manages to palm some dynamite and blow the ship enough not to kill them, but to effect an escape. They get on a boat. The three of them, Teddy and our two leads, disappear off on this boat. Mads goes to sort of shoot at them, which Indy avoids by tilting his head slightly. And then she's all celebrating, and he's like, "My friend has died." Then, right, he looks through. He thinks they're heading for they've done some. She's read the code to him and translated it magically in the code she predicted it was going to be in, And she says it is in Alexandria, and at the School of Mathematics under a certain statue. She says in the boat, he looks through some binoculars as they start to turn in a different direction because she's realized that it's too heavy. They melted away. It's encased in wax, and the real directions are inside. And it's actually in Syracuse, one of only two places, the second place Archimedes lived. And from the boat, listing gently to the right, he goes immediately, they must be going to Syracuse. That could be the only explanation for the point that when they are in Syracuse later, he is magically there. Wherever they turn up, Mads Mikkelsen magically finds them. It's kind of lazy.
We get not one, but two map sequences. So yes. I think I can overlook that fact by the fact that we get classic Indy map sequences. So I'm super happy.
Nice to see, and slightly modernised as well. They don't look exactly like they did in the original
kind of wish
films,
they
but they evoke them.
If they played the Crusaders music over it, I would have died and gone to heaven.
It was the wrong music.
That would be really cool. But no, it was cool to have a map sequence. I was really happy.
He also forgets the fact that Mads Mikkelsen gave Phoebe Waller-Bridge 10 grand worth of diamonds.
Yeah, what was that about?
Film forgets all about it because she asks him for £100,000, I think it is, to act for him. She's playing like a double agent. Her moral compass is exactly the same as Max in the fourth film, Ray Winston's character. The difference is he sort of dies for his crimes, and she's celebrated because at the end she goes from an asshole who doesn't care if Indy dies to an asshole who would kind of prefer he doesn't. That's it. So they head to Syracuse, and they find the body, don't they? They find the body, and it's got a watch on it. So they're like, it's been used because he's got out of time technology. He's got a timepiece on his watch which wasn't invented for another several hundred years. And they know where they've got to go to find the second half. And that's it, really, isn't it?
And they notice there's propellers in one of the engravings of what looks like a flying bird.
So there were planes in the past somehow. What that is, spoiler alert, it's their planes. Their planes are going to go into the past. It's a time loop. They don't change anything. It always was. They always went back to the past, and they were always seen. Archimedes always saw that and was told from that his worked. It worked. Now, the whole timepiece thing, what I don't know is whether, because the fissures appear to be in the sky. Now, I don't know if that's uniformly true. I don't know if they can appear underwater.
No, I'm not sure.
So did he get the watch from an idea in that they found some of the dead Germans and went, what's this? I can reverse engineer it. Or, as Indy says, did he use it? But how did he use it if he was only ever on boats? So there's a lot in this film that doesn't get answered. What we do find out during this various messy amble of a third act is that Mads Mikkelsen wants to go back to 1939. We have seen these dates trailed. We've seen the date in August of this year, and we've seen the date in August of 1939, which we shall recall the World War II broke out in September. What's confused me here, he wants to go back to kill Hitler because he says to the waiter earlier in the film, the black guy we talked about, he said, "You didn't win the war. Hitler lost it." And what he says to Indy is, "I saw every mistake as he made it." He could see.
Well, exactly. Yeah, he wants to go back and just basically correct all the mistakes, and right.
He wants to kill Hitler and do it correctly.
And do it himself.
But I don't know if does he replace the Voller of the time? Does he kill the Voller of the time? Does he tell the Voller of the time and disappear back?
Well, you can't go back and meet
yourself.
What
are the mistakes? Is there something? It would be contrived, but it would be easier if we knew Hitler made a specific mistake. If we heard, I'm going to go back to 1939 because that's where the Fisher told me, but Hitler's key mistake was this. In 1941, he did X, and from that point, it took 4 years, but he was always going to lose that war.
If it was something like, but his right-hand man would have made all the right choices.
Yeah.
Then, I'm no historian.
Yeah, if he can say it's Goebbels or Himmler or whoever, if they were in charge, I know that they would have avoided the same mistakes. But it's too throwaway. It's one sequence. Honestly, his motivation is so scantily explained that if you popped out for a piss, you'd miss it and it would never come out again. You just know he wants to go back in time and it's something to do with the Nazis. That's it. If you missed that one short scene, you would not know.
And this is like what I said at the beginning of the podcast about the Nazis and how they're portrayed. Like it's so important to the villain to go back in time, but he's living like a decent life in America, and we get no idea on
what is it about
thinks.
This world that. What is it about the Nazis' image of the world that you are now missing out on? And it isn't about arguing it's better or right, because no modern film is going to even going to present an argument.
It's just about establishing that in the character.
But what is it you missed out on? Because you're in America, which an American film is going to present as the land of plenty, obviously, and where people want to be. We in Europe don't always agree with that, but the film will certainly have that point of view. You are a lauded professor. You've helped NASA. All you've had is a throwaway remark from Mason that they've had what they want from you, but you are a professor. You would still be used. There were further missions. I know we don't go to the moon. There is still a space program. There are still rockets. There's an international space station now. There are other things for a man to do. Let's put it that way. Yeah, it's very scant. The only thing we ever get from the Nazis is they kill without compunction. We are left in no doubt they're evil because they do shoot people rather flippantly. But we don't know what the vision is, and we don't know what Hitler's mistake is. He says mistakes plural, but the film would have been better written if it was that. If I could get back and change that.
Or if it established like somehow it could have been him in charge. Then there would have been like, it's like a power thing. It's a power grab. It's not it's authority thing.
Yeah, is it just I can not only win the war, but I'm the rightful Führer? Anything, but the film doesn't give us that. For the sake of the plot, though, it works. We do. If you don't need that aforementioned piss, and you stick around and watch it all, you do know what he's going back for. It's just a bit woolly as to the why. What's he get out of it? What is it he wants to change? But we do know conceptually, if he can go back to 1939 and remove Hitler, he believes Germany will win the war and his future life will be better. Whether that changes it for him or just the younger version of him who will become a different version of him, we don't know. Time travel theory is not really discussed much in this film, let's put it that way. And once again, Indy doesn't actually change anything. In fact, if he'd not been in the film, he didn't have the knowledge of the code in which to be able to do it anyway, and he would have just gone back in time to the past.
Say that
and
about
died
Raiders, though.
No, it's exactly the same problem. He'd have either not got it to work,
Indiana Jones
or
who crossover that we never got.
he'd have convinced Helena to do all the code work with him, and but then she wouldn't have had Antonio Banderas' boat and diving equipment in the first place. But even if it had all worked, they wouldn't have understood continental drift. They'd have gone back to Syracuse and died there. Simple as that. But anyway, the dial. So let's just say Indy gets injured in the course of all this. He's captured and taken on the plane to fly towards this fissure. What they don't understand is continental drift. That's the movement of the continents, and something to do with that factoring into there. It's not well explained, but that factoring into, I don't know how the movement of a continent, that would affect the where, not the when, surely. But it's 2,000 years of erroneous calculations, meaning they're not going to come out in 1939, and in fact they don't know where they're going to come back. At the same time, Teddy has been separated from them, and she has said to she gets on a bike to catch a motorbike, not a push bike, to catch up with the plane to get in through the landing equipment. Teddy follows in another plane. She says, "Do you know how to fly that?" He says, "No, I've never flown in one of those because it's a Nord or something." And she says, "You've never flown any plane." And I'm like, "Well, why did you ask him if he could fly that?"
I know it's like a stupid like.
Did you take turns writing lines? Was this like Mad Libs between the it's 2 lines ago. So mental. So he follows in the plane and flies incredibly well. And when they go back, he's gravely injured. Now, gravely means dying. It looks through his chest. It looks like it's a bit high into the side for his heart, but it's in that region. It's not in an innocuous place.
Yeah.
And you really think he's dying, but then at times he can sort of help Helena, who's working to try and undermine this. And to cut a long story short, they fly into 200 years before Common Era. It's the Battle of Syracuse. The plane is being sort of, you immediately see what looks like it looks like, although it's 200 years further back again, it looks a bit like Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Troy. It looks like that kind of eras. And their plane is immediately damaged. It's shot at by the sort of fire bows from the boats. And so this is now going to crash. This boat is not making it back. Helena and Indy jump out of it. And obviously the boy has followed and landed his plane completely safely on the first time he's ever flown.
He's lucky to have a pilot sleeping in there with him as well.
There's another pilot with him. It is obviously his boat's like a trucker sleeping overnight before driving in the morning. And Indy inexplicably asks to stay. He's gravely injured. He needs modern medicine. But he's like, this is amazing. I've studied this all my life. So it's like, okay, so are you saying you want to stay to study this era? Well, you're dying. That's going to get infected. There's no antibiotics in this time. You're going to bleed out. You know you don't belong in this era, so you're going to change the future.
I think there's a little element of Indy sort of like being at peace and being like, oh, I'm actually in this fight.
I've lived my life studying the past. Now I get to die in it and experience it. I get all that, but bear in mind, in running time, he's about to be unconscious. We'll explain that in a minute. And when he wakes up, within moments, he's talking to Marion, who says, I hear you're back. Hang on a minute. 5 minutes ago, in his consciousness, he was begging to be allowed to leave to be killed, to die. Because there's nothing back there for me. There's no one there for me. And in fact, when he woke up in the present day, with his wound all dressed, he said, brought me back for what? This man is still epically fucking depressed. He's learned nothing. He's had a little adventure, but nothing has actually changed. So his arc has failed. There is no arc for him. All that's happened is Marion has been persuaded to come back. That's the only thing that's changed.
So you could say this film is like kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, because there's no arc for.
But he's learned nothing, although at least
without the Lost Ark.
At least with Raiders, he
started.
started.
Very clever. I like that a lot.
No, with Raiders, he started off talking about fortune and glory, and by the end, it belongs in a museum. He learned the value of what he was doing, and that there's powers stronger than him. It's a biblical power in that film. Here, there is no supernatural as such.
There is no arc.
So there is no. Even though I'm an atheist, this series works better with a spiritual bent, and the last two films haven't really had it. So
no, because it has this. It needs to have this. I think Raiders is the best one for this, for having this kind of like mysterious
power bigger than your own,
like almost scary kind of like.
Yeah.
God, what are we dealing with? This kind of, we don't know what we're doing. This, do you know what I mean? It's almost.
And he says he doesn't believe in the God and supernatural, but he's seen things he can't explain. Well, I'm sorry, the Indiana Jones. I am an atheist personally, but the Indiana Jones of this film would believe in God with everything he's gone through.
He would believe in something. There's like, without a doubt, it'd be like, well, I'm not sure what, but there's something. There's got to be.
Yeah. But he goes back, meets Marion. She's not really changed at all. She cares about him a bit more. She's had time around him. The only bit that I thought was hinting at character development is he does say what happened to Mutt. On the boat, the night before they do their dive, they're all playing cards or doing whatever it is they're doing. And she says, what will you do if you go back? Hang out with Archimedes? Hang out with, she doesn't say Archimedes. I forget who she does say. And he says, I'd go back and tell my son not to enlist. And it turns out he enlisted to sort of piss his dad off and went to Vietnam and was killed. And as I wrote in my review, it's the film series saying Poochie died on the way back to his home planet. Wouldn't you say, Becca?
Well, this is it, yeah.
It's Poochie went back to his home planet. It's
yeah,
the series going.
A title card comes up saying Poochie died on the way back to his home planet.
Which is a shame, because that's the series trying to course correct in service of a film that arguably isn't really any better than Crystal Skull. It's less fakey in places. It's got a bit more. I don't know. It swings and roundabouts as to whether it's better or worse. It's certainly not a home run as to be better. And in fact, I rewatched Crystal Skull about a month ago because I took my wife through them all, and she didn't really love it. She didn't vibe with Indiana Jones very well. She liked James Bond, and she's liked a lot of stuff I've shown her, but she doesn't love Indiana Jones by any means. But I took her through them all, and I must admit, having seen this film tonight twice, I found a fresh viewing of Crystal Skull easier than my second viewing of this. In the second hour of this, I was just desperate for it to finish. It's way too long. But that's it. That's the end of the film, and he's left, and Marion comes in, and he's back to looking a bit doddery again, but he says he's back, and they all disappear out. Salah comes in to sort of, thumbs up and freeze.
For everybody out for ice cream.
It's like the end of Lethal Weapon 4. The gang's all here. We're family, it's all the final thumbs up to the camera. Salah's there for the end of the film. They all go off for ice cream, and Indy presumably goes to have sex because he reaches out the window for his hat. You do have a callback to Raiders where they kiss the bits that don't hurt, but it can't overcome the fact that I've just watched a profoundly depressed man who's too old, is now out of work, is still wanted for murder because the film's never covered that at all. And in fact, the person who did it is now fucking dead 2,000 years ago. Or on the floor of the ocean, do you know what I mean? Depending on which one. And so I don't feel, this is particularly heartwarming. I think we've come back to a man who, even the Harrison Ford that made The Force Awakens might have had a shot at making this work. But he's 81 playing 70, which means, as I say, depends how you do it relative to the timeline of Crystal Skull, obviously, because Force Awakens is only 7 years after a film that was set in 57. But if you think of Harrison Ford's age, the first film was set in 36 or 39, one of the two. Basically, he was the same age of his character. Indiana Jones was born according to the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and what we know of the character in 1899. So the character is 70 in this film. Harrison Ford in 2015 was 72, 73. They filmed it a year or so before. He would have been about right. I think he could have pulled it off. I just think this last bit of aging is just done for him, and it just doesn't work. Not when he's in action. And I think that will double as my final thoughts. I didn't hate it. I sound like I hated it. I nitpick it terribly. The second half of it is too slow. And he is too old now. And I hate to say that because there's nothing wrong with having a 70-year-old action lead. Unfortunately, 81 was just pushing it a step too far. And that's it from me.
Yeah, I just think the movie Magical Punch, where he gets knocked out, and then the fact that he's got a big serious wound, he gets transported back into his own time.
So he's now got concussion and a bullet wound, but time for a bit of shagging.
To a hospital. By the way, still unconscious from the punch. Yeah. He's not well, no, he's not woken up yet. He's
Helena's world-class surgeon as well, on top of being brilliant.
He's been treated, travelled all the way back to New York in his apartment, and Marion's
woken
been informed
up
that
in
he's
time
back.
for Salah to arrive and Marion.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about that, to be fair. And there is a bit of, like I say, I don't want to go too far down that incel stroke YouTubers, and some of them I've watched and enjoyed, to be fair. But I don't want to go too far down the line of you're just emasculating men. But there's no doubt there's been a trend lately of female characters are not given enough flaws or problems to overcome. We had this with Rey, and in The Force Awakens, I bought it because I thought they were playing out to her having a power with the Force that was so strong it was frightening her. And there's something to that because it was Palpatine, but effectively that trilogy got so muddled it didn't pay off. It's better if characters start off with challenges or things they can't overcome or things they're weak at. She is a bit too good at everything that I just assumed she dressed the wound and that was it. because it never occurred to me that the film would have her not able to do something. So whatever the case, yeah, I mean, that's my final thoughts on the film, though. And I as I say, if you guys want to just tell us where you are with it. By the way, just one last thing. I don't know. The first question I'd be asking me is, where do I rank it relative to Crystal Skull? And I'm just going to dodge that one. I don't know yet. I need time.
It's not far away from Crystal Skull, though, is it?
I'd still rank Crystal. I need to watch it again.
Crystal Skull was easier to watch.
I would still rank it last. I kind of put like Raiders and Crusade do swap around, but I would probably say like
Crystal Skull looks cheap in places. This doesn't.
Yeah, that I do kind of
looks rushed, but that's not.
I'd probably say like Rangers, Crusade. Like Crusade is one of my favourites, but I appreciate like Raiders is very often like the best. So your best and favourite are very often two different things. Yeah, I'd probably say like
series into feeling right if it isn't fighting Nazis.
Yeah, well, if he's not punching Nazis in the face, then I don't know. I've got no choice. The original trilogy, and then this one, and then Crystal Skull. That's where I'd rate it so far. But I might do a rewatch, and then I'll be like, hold on a minute, I was wrong. So that's where I would rank it so far.
Yeah, I'm fully enough. This film has actually made me kind of curious to watch Crystal Skull again. Just out of like interest.
What will shock you is how much younger he looks. I saw a screenshot from it earlier, and I'm like, yeah, 15 years has done more than you would imagine. And he's still got a career ahead of him. I mean, as long as he lives.
He's going to be joining the MCU soon.
He's still a quality action lead, but the problem is you're putting him in the same outfit he wore when he was like in his late 30s. And, of course, that can only highlight that, Christ, you're looking a bit frail in that now.
But he still looks good. I would argue he still looks good, though.
Yeah, but he doesn't look 70. He does look 80 to me.
Yeah, he does look old, but it's that issue. Like people think, Bond looks old in Octopussy, but then I think he looks older. Roger Moore looks older in View to a Kill, but that doesn't mean that he looks like any less a Bond, for example. But yeah, it's.
I don't buy him as a fanny magnet though. At that point,
no.
Indiana Jones isn't one, and I like the fact they've let Karen Allen age. Karen Allen does look like a woman in her 70s. I still think she looks great, and she's got a lovely smile. But she's another one that's aged dramatically since the last film, and that's fine. But that's who he's meant to be with. They don't need him doing what he did in the third film and finding some blonde on the way. You know what I mean? They've let him age, and that's a good decision. Whereas they were in denial with Roger Moore. He was still this vital sex magnet when he was late 50s. It wasn't working.
What's kind of odd is like Roger Moore wasn't that much older than Daniel Craig.
No, and Tom Cruise is older, but it's all about what air you give off. This guy had industrial amounts of hairspray on and couldn't do action. He just didn't. he didn't scream. He didn't look right for it by anymore. But then I thought Daniel Craig was too old in the last one, but only just. But
he was kind of getting there, doesn't he? I mean, obviously, many years have passed between Casino Royale and No Time to Die. But
anyway, we're getting waylaid. Final thoughts on this film?
Not the years, it's the mileage, or whatever the phrase is. So.
Yeah, it's not the years, honey. It's the mileage.
That's the one. There we go.
I've said most of what I think I can say. The only thing that I've really thought is it's kind of a shame. Wouldn't it be better if it was short round instead of Phoebe Waller-Bridge? If it was like short round come out.
Literally.
Indy, I need your help. I need your expertise.
No offense.
It's like, not seen short round since only once. Why not have him come back now? And now he's an Oscar winner. Would have been even perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, starring Oscar winner Kiki Kwan, definitely.
I was looking for his cameo somewhere, but there you go.
Well, I wonder if that thing about Teddy Teddy flying a plane and not being able to fly a plane, was obviously a link to short round driving the car, but you kind of feel like short rounders he can actually drive a car, but whereas with Teddy you don't know if he can fly a plane or not, so I wonder if that was kind of a callback to that. But yeah, I think they could. I mean, the young actor playing Teddy, he was quite good, but yeah, they should have just got back in short round.
He didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't stand
Antonio
out.
Banderas
The film could have done without him. What was he used for? Yes, he had to fly another plane, but you could cut that sequence any number of different ways. Phoebe could have followed him in a plane. Who knows, right?
She could have flown the plane.
Well, yeah, but then who would get him free? But you write the scene differently. That's not insurmountable. But you don't really need him. I don't really get what There's nothing in this film that's insurmountable without him, unless you're trying to humanize her. But she's still an asshole at the end of the film. So I don't know. He didn't do much wrong. He just didn't stand out. And if it's him being captured by the bad guys and stuff, it's like, again, you don't need it. We're not emotionally invested in him. They could have killed him and no one would have really cared. But the child actor himself didn't do anything wrong.
No, it's just it was just like a numbing experience, the whole thing.
Too long, too busy. Yeah.
It just did not feel like Indiana Jones as well. I think I had the same.
It did in the prologue, despite the fact I got pulled out of it a few times with the effect. The tuk-tuk chase did, to some degree. But when they dived for the thing, that felt more like a Bond set piece.
Yeah, funny enough, I did think of Few Eyes Only in that. Yeah,
Octopussy vibes during the tuk-tuk chase, definitely.
But that isn't just because Indy's never done diving. It's just it felt like a Bond set piece. You know, you see that in a Bond film. Bond hits another thing, and he moves to a different environment, needing a different skill, whereas Indy normally is using either brain or brawn, and it's 2 skills. That's all.
And I think James Mangold is probably a good replacement choice for Spielberg for this.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like his take would be more like the opening. Is broadly kind of feels like what he would do if he was given carte blanche and everything. It was just all him, and like, right, you get to do whatever you want to do. You go in. I think that probably would have been.
Let's recover that sense of playfulness we had last time out, or in the first films.
Yeah, it would have been a bit video gamey, but kind of like what we had before. You know, do you know what I mean? I think we would have had that. It would have been like that, like you know, like the opening, that kind of thing.
We shall never know. I've seen worse films. I mean, I likened some of the fetch quests in my written review to Rise of Skywalker, but 2 things. Firstly, it is significantly better than Rise of Skywalker, and I could sit and try and explain that now, but listen to the 2 reviews and what I've said about the 2 films. I think it's self-evidently. But the second thing is, the fetch quest nature of it is something I thought about afterwards. Where they just had to go there to get that. During Rise of Skywalker, I saw it happening in front of me. I thought, well, that's just time wasting. And then, well, that's not relevant. You know, I could see them struggling through the scripting process there, whereas it's a bit better disguised here. But it feels like Indiana Jones in places, and that's the best I can say, really. I'm kind of glad they killed off Mutt, but at the same time, rather cheaply done. And every one of these films is somebody's first. There's some kid out there who liked Mutt, but there you go. So yeah, that's it from me. I don't think we're going to do fun facts today, but I just because we put this together at the last minute. But just a word about where we're going to go next. We'll announce more in the next couple of weeks, just because we haven't really figured it out. Charlie could be taking a break for a little while from the actual show, so we're going to go off and do a few things just to give him that break. We will be doing a Bond commentary next. Chris will sign us off and explain that. Name it, if you like. That's going to be recorded next weekend, but this show will be out in the interim. Then after that, we're going to go back to Mission Impossible, because Dead Reckoning Part 1 comes out a couple of days after we record the Bond podcast. And we are complete on that. Fast 10 we didn't cover because we hadn't done Fast 9. We did it before the last one came out, but we are up to date with Mission Impossible, so we're going to do that one. And then from then, we're going to move on to another series. And we're not going to tell you what it is at the moment, because we don't know. We know our next long series is very likely to be Alfred Hitchcock, but Becca is still scoping that one out, and we've decided to do a short one in the interim. So, the way it's going to work is Bond commentary next, to be named by Chris, who's going to sign us off. Then it's going to be unknown series. Then it's going to be Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, full review as normal to go with our series that we did in 2018 or 19. Then it's going to be a series of unknown composition, but it's going to be short. So rule of thumb, probably 5 entries or less. That is up for debate, but it's certainly not going to be like a Marvel length or anything. Then we are going to because we've only got a couple of Bond commentaries left, we are going to do the first of our long-promised Bond read-alongs. So we are going to review 1953's
I
Ian
thought you were
Fleming.
going to read the novel out for.
I just realised I said that, didn't I? Yeah, it's only going to take about 14 hours, folks.
But yeah, we're just going to narrate the whole lot. You know, I'll play, you know, Galabrand, not Galabrand. I'll play Vesper.
We are going
Dave
to...
will play Bond. Chris will play the Chief.
We are going to review the 1953 Ian Fleming novel of Casino Royale rather than do a Bond commentary. And we may find that replaces commentaries for a while, but we'll mix it up and work that out as we go.
Maybe review or Bond review somewhere along the line, but we're not quite sure yet.
That's not going to be for a while because we've got so many more season series we want to do, and we do want to up the pace. We can't ever promise you once a week again, but we can promise you better than once every several months. It's just we've been held up by things that we couldn't really help, but we're back in the swing of things now. And we are going to, as I say, start doing some Bond novels. One day we will do Bond again, but it's likely to be our sign-off when we're old men and women.
Who knows, might even give us a new movie.
It'll be when the doctor says you've got about 6 months, Mr. Bond, to me, and it'll be right. Okay, let's quickly do these again.
No, let's hope they didn't say that. I hope things don't come to that.
No, I'm saying it's when we're going to be old. We'll do that because this is no end in sight. But anyway, quickly for social media, and then we'll sign off. You can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me on Cinetrox on Twitter. You can find all the episodes on Podbean or your favourite listening podcast device.
Yep, just a few parish notices really. Don't forget to rate us, review us, to like us and share us on your podcatcher of choice. As the chaps have said, you can find Do Expect Us to Talk on Facebook, Do Expect Us to Talk on Twitter, at Do Expect Us to Talk on YouTube, Do Expect Us to Talk, where all our podcasts are available, as well as playlists as well. So if you want to pick out a particular series that we've done, you can all find them there. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Most recent episodes are available only. Stitcher, Podbean, Podbay, wherever you can find us, we're generally there. But wherever you are, you know, if you're listening to us and you're on social media, why not just do a little status update? I'm listening to Do Expect Us to Talk on which platform? Let us know. Let our friends know that you're very cool and listening to us.
I was outside a church the other day reading parish notices, and it was the parish hall
Did they mention Do Expect Us to Talk?
And it was in the town of Hessenford, and it said 23rd of April, talk about beavers.
Oh really? Was that something?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that. Is that something you've seen? Okay.
I was like, I might come back to this village. I was at some village pub about 8 miles from home. That's a really nice restaurant by a stream. It's lovely. We were just sat there. And I thought that looks like a church. I'm just going to wander across the road and see what it is, because it sort of looked like a church but not. And then I said, that looks like parish notices or something. And it was actually the church's hall. The church was behind us up on the hill. And so it had, coffee morning and so on. But 23rd of April was talk about beavers, what it means for you in the future. So I don't know what that was about.
Might be a anyway, or it might be a community group.
So for the first time in a while, we go back to James Bond, which means Chris.
Next week, Do Expect Us to Talk will return with Octopussy.